Another week, another episode of Stand-Up.
Why don't you introduce this week?
All right, I will. Welcome to Stand-Up Memories. I'm Peter Bales. This is Jackie Martling.
His hesitancy, he's waiting for me to break in again. And I fooled him, I didn't.
I don't know how to do this if you don't interrupt.
I know that.
We have a great guest this week. He's back with us. John Blenn, playwright, writer, director, critic, you name it. Historian.
Long Island icon.
Long Island icon. John
And
Blenn.
a nice guy.
And a nice guy.
And a nice guy.
And I, last week, described John Blenn as Zelig because this guy is in more cool photographs than anybody I know. And I'd like to know, what do you think some of your coolest photographs are, and how do you do it?
I got one word for you.
What is it?
Photoshop.
No.
Exactly.
I guarantee.
I saw him
No.
with Abe Lincoln.
Before there was Photoshop, my wife is a graphic artist, so even before there was Photoshop, she was fixing those for me.
No, you're
No.
the greatest photos, and it's always people that you know, and also people you know, but this is them 20 years ago, and the photos never get old. It's just great fun. And you just interacted with everybody. You know, doesn't it amaze you that good, bad, or otherwise, we are all still in the game.
Yeah, it's nice to be around to talk about, especially after the last couple of years on this planet, for sure.
You know, it's like, it's crazy. Like you run into somebody, you can't believe they're still doing that. And like guys that you worked with in obscurity, like in Fort Lauderdale comic strip 40 years ago, and all of a sudden, wow, they're still doing this. And it's just like, you know.
So, John, which of those photographs do you treasure the most, both in music and in comedy?
I think I don't know so much that I treasure the photos as I treasure the people who are in the photos that I met over the years. I've met a lot of really great people over the years, and most of my idols at some points. I didn't get pictures with every one of them, but I was there on most of them. I think that really, it's funny, when I first started posting old pictures, and it wasn't even necessarily just me, and it was old shots of a lot of things. Dennis Regan, the comedian, called me up. He goes, "Are you dying?" I said, "Why?" And he goes, "Well, I was just looking at your Facebook page, and you put up like 40 pictures last night of not you, and why did you do that?" I go, "Because I run into comedians all the time, and I run into musicians. Like, my house burned down. I don't have any pictures of my band anymore. I never got a shot in the 2 years I was playing with them on stage. I don't know why I don't have a photo." And I know I have all that stuff because of Good Times and Long Island Entertainment and Island Ear, and we had photo files, and I was shooting some of that stuff myself, or my photographers were shooting things I was at. And then, of course, when I met Joni, my wife, in '89, she went just about everywhere with me. It'll be 33 years this year.
Yeah,
and
33 years.
Yeah,
Always with
Joni Blenn.
And she
always with the camera.
She's a graphic artist and always carrying a camera, and that's her thing. She's done most of the shooting. I've only really gotten into the picture taking myself the last few years, and learning from her in a lot of ways, and other
But tell me,
photographers.
when you post stuff,
Right.
I never post stuff and go, you post stuff, you sit there and I dwell on it for 30 seconds, 5 minutes, that you just, because the pictures tell a million words and put you in a million, don't they feel so great?
Absolutely.
You know, and there must be great, incredible memories. I mean, I guess that's such an obvious thing to say, I'm an idiot, but.
I mean, when I first started at Hofstra, when I moved over there in early 1980, just as I was about to go on the air, Oingo Boingo, Danny Elfman, of course, is probably the preeminent soundtrack artist these days. He's done all of Timothy Burton's stuff. He just did the Doctor Strange movie that came out. We went to see him at Hofstra, my best friend Mark, who was my engineer, and I, and after the show was over with, and they didn't go over that great. We go downstairs in the basement of Spit, and we're waiting for the security guys to go, "Oh, you guys don't have passes." Band's down at the end of the hall on the left. You know, they could have carried less.
Right.
So we walk in, there's these 8 guys, including Danny, kind of staring at the floor, and like, that was unbelievable. That's like one of the greatest shows we ever saw. And they all looked at us, and they're like, Really. They like thought we were being sarcastic. It's like, we loved you guys, you know, and we introduced ourselves as college radio guys. Long story short, we invited him on my radio show, which is the first one I ever did at night at Hofstra, the following evening. And we sent a car in to pick him up, and we brought him out, and they did the show and took pictures with Danny, who now does everything from like Spider-Man,
But
Batman.
at that point,
he's the
that
guy.
must have made them feel so special and so.
He's still a friend all these years later, and he's like I always say that's the band I grew up with in this business. I mean, I was listening to Tull and I was listening to Zeppelin and Deep Purple and all those things, but they were already really well established. But Oingo Boingo was brand new, especially to the East Coast at a
could really
national
use a
level,
little bit
and
of a
from
leg up.
California.
Right.
Yeah, so they kind of became the band we hitched our wagon to and grew up with and always kept tabs on, etc.
But what you guys said to them at that time meant a lot.
Without a doubt.
And I'll tell you something else, to our audience especially. When you're leaving a comedy show and you say to a comedian, "Nice job," it makes, I swear.
It reverberates.
It means everything to the, we don't admit it. I can't think of anybody who's talked about it. I'm talking about it now. It means a lot. It just does.
It's such a thin line, though, because if you say "nice try,"
Oh,
it's a totally different reaction.
Well, we've been through all the thing in the old days when there were 3 comics. It'd be like, "You were great, you were great." And,
you were great.
you know, you were all right too. And were you on the show? You know.
And the one I hate most of all is, "I want my money back." I can't stand hearing that.
Oh well, you must hear it so much.
But now,
But
John,
it's so crazy. It's so fun, man.
we got to ask John. Can you think of a concert that you went to where you liked the act a lot, but then when you saw the concert afterwards, you thought, "Man, that was much better than even I imagined"?
Of course. I mean, I saw Pink Floyd 3 times, and in particular on their wall tour when they played the Coliseum, and they built a wall in front of it and then flew a plane into it in the second half. That was a spectacle that only played 12 times in New York, and I saw it twice. Wow. I should say it's 12 times in the United States, but it was a remarkable eye popper. They always carried incredible systems with them. I was always very much into staging when I would go to concerts.
Yeah.
Like, the Eagles are great, but to just see 4 guys standing in the microphone, Leonard Skinner, Outlaws, stand at the microphones, play your songs, change the lights from red to blue to green to red, and that's it.
Yeah.
To me, I was always more fascinated by the rushes
Right
of
there,
the world
like
that brought
you're here
big
for the
staging.
music. We'll play the music. Well, that's fine.
Correct.
So then charge $110. Don't charge $450,000.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's obscene and completely out of control. It just flies in the whole spirit of things. But
You know, I never went to those things, but I remember with the Stern Show, we all went to see the Rolling Stones, Steel Wheels, Thunder Wheels, whatever it was called.
Steel Wheels, right?
But it was an incredible staging. Well, I don't even
Every
remember
one
what
of their
they did,
tours
but I was
is.
like, I hadn't seen one of those things. You know, that was not 5 guys standing on stage being 1,000 years old. They, you know, there was so much going on. I was like, wow, you know.
The Rolling Stones are the best live band ever. And if I just dated myself, that's fine. I still stand by it. Beatles better musically, probably.
Yeah.
But the Rolling Stones, I saw them in 1972. You can't take your eyes off Mick Jagger. And when you do, it's still pretty incredible.
Well, that's the other thing, too. I mean, if you've got a front person, then the staging becomes a whole lot less important because they're charismatic. They've got something to say to you. I was never a big fan of performers like, and this next song is, and this next song. Tell me about why there is this song. Tell me about what was going on with you at that point.
Public
Be a little
speaking.
sexy or mysterious.
Public speaking is hard for a lot of acts, right, Jackie? I mean,
You know, I actually saw the Stones in 1969. One of my friends at college, he was from Detroit, and there were a lot of very wealthy Ford Motor Company executives, blah, blah, blah. And one of his friends had a couple extra tickets, he said, and we went to whatever the hockey arena was in Detroit, but we were in the 9th row. Right. And the opening act was B.B. King. Right. And it was the Rolling Stones. I remember it was like seeing him at the brokerage. And I remember turning around, and I don't think with a shotgun I could have hit the person. I mean, Olympia Stadium, they was so far away, and like I could have reached out and touched B.B. King. You know,
now,
it was like.
That's Jackie the
great.
Jackie the Joke Man excluded. Can you think of a concert you went to and you were
Don't
disappointed.
start with your, don't
Disappointed
Try for
when-
your humor. If you go for humor, you're gonna wind up with a new joke in your act, and nobody's gonna know who it is.
I know. I'm asking for it. But were you ever ready to be impressed by somebody you really liked a lot, and then
I think that that's happened a decent amount of times. I'm not going to specifically name names on it, but there are times when you can tell somebody's just shanking a show, or they're not putting their heart and soul into it.
Or they're not as good as you thought they were going to be.
Without a
and
doubt.
it's a heartbreak.
Yep.
It's a heartbreak.
And you can just tell people are kind of going through the motions. It's the last cash grab. They're just not really into it anymore. You can tell they don't like each other. It's pretty obvious.
Wow.
And that stuff, I think, comes through really loud and clear when you're at a show. And same thing with comedians. I mean, you see guys go up on stage and you know they didn't have a good show or a good weekend, and they're just wrapping up the last show. And I saw Dennis Leary one night at the brokerage where right before he exploded. And he goes up there and he pulls his chair up and he puts his feet up in the bar out in front of it and he's smoking cigarettes. Like, yeah, well, let me see. And we're all kind of looking at each other going, really? That's what he brought to the game tonight? And that he just couldn't have been bothered with that particular
get
show.
the paycheck and go home.
And I think he's, on so many levels, a tremendous talent.
Oh, you know,
but he just didn't
he
feel
is.
like it that night. And I know sitting in the audience, and I've always said the same thing to the audiences that come to see what I do too when I do theater. You could be anywhere that night. There's much bigger talent, much bigger shows, much flashier stuff. You have to make that person say, why is this $20 worth it to be there tonight as opposed to all these other places? And when they come out for you, you owe it to them to give them everything you got for that reason.
And you know what's crazy too which is everybody has their opinions and their show business things that they adhere to. Al Jolson said, the audience is never wrong.
Right.
Like if I'm entertaining you and you're not digging it, or you're not finding me entertaining or talented, it's my fault. That's not your fault. It's not your job to adjust.
Yeah,
There's
you
a
know
million
what?
ways
As
to
a
look at
journalist,
that.
I might disagree with you on that because I've seen some shows. I'll pull Bill Hicks out of a hat for one, where going over to Jimmy's in the back of the room, every comedian in the back of the room is falling off their chairs, peeing themselves, laughing at how funny he is. In the front of the building, you can hear crickets because they don't get them. They're not into them. But Hicks is doing his job in real time with the energy he should be doing it with. He's just got the wrong audience in
But
front of
Jolson was from that school of the 1920s where
him. Yeah, different.
you had to work
Very
to the
different.
people.
Yep.
listen to
I
this?
didn't say I necessarily agreed with it, but it's interesting how different people have different takes.
You got to do 100%. My parents, speaking of the 1920s, it might have been the 30s, went to see the incredible, famous Jimmy Durante in New York City the night of a blizzard. And the show went on, and there were 12 people, and he did part of his act where he played a piano and destroyed the piano as he went on, completely destroyed the piano. And my parents always said he gave 110% for 12 people.
Yeah.
It didn't matter.
And I've seen that on occasions too. I mean, like Eddie Brill and Danny Wilson, for instance. I saw the two of them together in front of 12 people at Governor's on Memorial Day weekend, one late Friday show. And the two of them just poured their heart and soul into it, and that audience loved them.
Yeah.
And I would have people say to me a lot as a critic when I go, I did most of my reviewing on Friday nights at 11:30 on those late shows. And they'd be like, you SOB, what are you doing in the building at this late show? I was like, I came to see you win. I came to see you work. Anybody's going to look great at 8 o'clock on Saturday night. Show me what you got under the worst circumstances.
Somebody just sent me one of those Facebook messages after my show in Florida, and they said that they saw me at Chuckles on the night of a huge blizzard, and the first show was sold out. And he said, I forgot how he said it, but there were like 10 people in the audience that braved that snowstorm.
Right.
And he said, you did like a whole hour. Meanwhile, you're there. You don't, not to be magnanimous, what am I going to do 5 minutes to go home? These people came out, I'm here,
I used to be fascinated by the comics that would beat up a small audience with like, hey, I could get you guys into my car and we could just go down the block to the pizza parlor or whatever.
They're the people that are here.
They made it, yeah.
They're
Go knock on the doors around the neighborhood because that's who you're looking for. Go over
can
to
have-
Division Avenue and bang on those
Yeah,
houses.
you can have just as much fun with a small audience as you can with
Right.
a huge one. And the only one unhappy should be the owner, because the comedians are quite
I love that.
able to have fun.
Hey, I left more people than this in my bed. I always love that.
And there's some other comedians out there too that I know that like a table's talking in the corner and they'll just fixate on that and they'll tank the show because to them nobody's paying attention. The hell with the two of them. Everybody else is watching you, but they get obsessed with that one table where they're talking amongst themselves.
I got to tell you this:
you just can't do
my
it.
band had a show. Some guy booked our band and booked a hall, and he thought he was going to do so great and make so much money. It was someplace outside East Lansing. We got all set up and we're ready to go. And I mean, literally, there were like 6 or 8 rent-a-cops in front of the stage, just to make sure that everything's gonna be all right. And there was nobody there. I mean, nobody. And this guy had them open the doors and had us aim our amplifiers toward the door. It was the funniest thing ever. Not one person. Turn up the amps and we'll open the door.
Every comedian who's dealing with what you're talking about, the loud table, faces a decision and you have to make it on stage in front of everybody and your stomach is churning. Should I stop and
That is
deal with
never
them?
not a tough decision.
And
Right, of
because if you jokingly deal with them, they may not understand that they need to shut up.
Right.
And if you get angry or show anger, you can bring the whole show
your
down.
mood
and
completely
it's eating
changes.
you up
Yep.
inside.
And then there's the whole thing about somebody that's a heckle, and you don't deal with them constantly because they'll think they're part of the show. So
Yep.
you wait and take a shot, and then blah, blah, blah.
I see more of that now than I ever
But
did. It's
throwing
amazing.
somebody out is absolutely the last.
it's the
'cause
worst.
once somebody is taken out of there, it's like, whoa.
And
You start from scratch.
It's the
and
worst.
You can only throw somebody out if the entire audience
Wants them to go.
wants them to go.
And most of the time,
and they'll
they
cheer.
applaud. Yeah,
Right.
they do. Now, another thing, and Jackie knows this,
Well, that's why they cheer for you, because you're done.
when I get off,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the reaction really is. Anyway,
I told my sister I got a standing ovation in Boca Raton. She says, I'm surprised they could stand up. I said, you're my sister. You're my sister.
I worked upstate. The Giants used to train in Pleasantville for some reason. I remember that.
Yep.
Then they moved. Okay, so there was a bar there, and they had a comedy show, and Taylor comes in, and he's the leader off the field as well with a bunch of Giants, and they sat down and they were loud, and we're trying to do a comedy show, and what do you say to these guys? And Lawrence Taylor, at one point, there was a female comedian on stage. I don't want to say the name, but she was on stage. Lawrence Taylor stands up.
Who?
I can't. He stands up. He walks up on stage. He takes out a $100 bill and hands it to her. Says, "If you get off stage, I'll give you this $100 bill." And she took the $100 bill and walked off. And the show was over. And the next week, outside the Improv, I heard her talking to a bunch of comics saying, "Last week I had such a great show. I got a $100 tip."
Oh, I love it.
You gotta be able to spin this stuff.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, you gotta be able to spin this stuff.
I had him in the aisles, laughing, no, leaving. Well, I don't know if I ever told this Jim Myers story, but in the very, very beginning, the East Side Comedy Club had just sort of opened up, but we're all working these little gigs everywhere, and Myers wasn't exactly ripping it up. And I was sitting at the bar with somebody else, and Myers came walking in from a gig he had just done. And I said, "How'd it go?" And he says, "I brought the house down." I said, "You brought the house down?" He said, "No, I brought the house down."
Every comedian has bombed. I was at the comic strip. Jerry Seinfeld came back from upstate and said, "I don't know why I'm in this business. It was so horrible. I think I'm going to quit." Every comedian experiences that. When comedians go to the diner, because 99.9% of the shows are great, what are you going to talk about at the diner? The ones that went wrong. Jackie talks about this all the time. When the joke doesn't work, that's when he laughs. Right. That's when he laughs. When I'm
Did you
on
hear
stage,
Miniveri killed in Boston? Hey, did you hear Bales killed in California? You hear Bartlett bombed in Kansas City? Tell me. Because it's interesting.
or the power goes out, or there's a fight. That's what you talk about.
Along those lines, the first time I ever saw Myers, Nicky Vermitsky asked me to come down to see him at Brokerage, and I had been at a couple of other shows, and he's just like, well, stop by at the Late Show then. So I go to the Late Show, and I just wasn't into him. And about 15 minutes into him, he's doing the whole shtick with, my mother was a hamburger, and my father was a Frankfurt. I got up to Nick, and I just can't handle this guy. I'm sorry. I'll see him another time. I'm sure he's funny for what he is, but I'm going to fall asleep. I got to go. And then Nick calls me the following day and goes, you ran on so fast. It's like, I didn't even get to tell you. He's not really German. And that's just all a shtick. And he switches it over about 10 minutes later. And to this day, every time I see Myers, it's just like, you're the first comedian I ever walked out on in my life. And if I had a brain in my head, I would have never walked back in.
I was the second, third, and fourth.
Did we do this story about him on the air yet?
I think, yes, we might have. We'll figure this out. Listen, John Blenn is going to be back with us next week, the incomparable John Blenn. Of course,
Haven't done that yet.
Jackie the Joke Man Martling, and I will be back. This has been Stand-Up Memories. We got a lot more to talk about. So see you next week, right?
Yay.
Hey, a new episode of Stand-Up Memories every Wednesday.
How exciting is that?
Starring me, Peter Bales, and right here, Jackie the Joke Man Martling.
Please follow us on social media. Search it out. What is it? MeSpace?
MySpace,
Your space?
TikTok, Instagram, Facebook.
Doodah, doodah.